Welcome back to Tinfoil Hat Time. Well, today we are going to be having a look at Who Owns You, talking about your corporate overlords. Because as I started examining life, I kind of became shocked as to how little stuff we actually own anymore. We have been co-opted. It probably started around, I think it really started around 20 years ago. And then it just kind of started to bleed into other places of our life. And then I looked at the various things. Think of the video games, the entertainment, the music, the movies, all that kind of stuff. Even now, our cars. Oh, Kitty wants to come up and say hi. Kitty, do you agree? Yeah, Kitty agrees. Want to see the kitty with a tinfoil hat? There you go. Come on. Nope. Look at the camera. There you go. There's a kitty with a tinfoil hat. He does not like the hat. You don't like the hat, do you? All right. But our video games, our music, our books, our movies, even our cars, our devices, we don't own any of this stuff anymore. If you go back and read the terms of service and terms and conditions of the products that you're using, you don't own much anymore. Back when you could buy CDs, they really didn't have this foresight in. If I bought a CD, and I have a box full of CDs in my closet over here, if I have a box full of CDs, I own the rights to those CDs. I own them. I can purchase those CDs. I can take those CDs. I can put them as digital files legally in the United States. I can play those digital files from anywhere. In fact, I was wanting to. I forgot to grab it. But I have a little MP3 player. Okay, it's just a tiny little MP3 player that has like a, umpteen million hour battery, I think. I charge it like 3 times a year, I think. But I have that little MP3 player, and it has an SD card expansion slot. So it has 8 gigabytes of internal storage, and it has an expansion slot, and I think right now there's either a 16 or 32 gigabyte chip in there, all completely full of movies and music, or not movies, of music and sermons that I have, a variety of different things, and I'll listen to those, and it doesn't matter where they came from, that thing will play it. But if you purchase a lot of your music, now some of your music is now, they've realized that people are going to share their music more than they want. And so anymore, a lot of your music, some cases, then you still have the ability to use them, but not all of them. And this is kind of what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to talk more about music specifically in a bit. We're actually going to start with video games. And the reason I'm going to start with video games is I, unfortunately, am not a gamer. So I'm not all of that up to date with what's going on in the gaming world, in the gaming community. But I'm looking at the possibility of building a Steam OS system, see how it works. I'm thinking about doing it with a Linux-based Steam natively and with a Windows-based Steam running on Play on Linux, just so I can get a chance to experiment with, with Windows games on Linux through a Wine emulator or a Wine application. I'm looking into that because as I look back over the landscape of how I do things, I don't completely avoid all video games, but for me, I don't generally take the time to learn a lot of new things, and so I have an Xbox that I bought the Xbox because of the kids that I mentored about a decade ago. When I had moved out of that city, I was like, I'll get an Xbox so we can actually get on and still play some games together. And we've done that a couple of times, but not a lot. But still, I looked at it and said, well, what are the games we played? Well, I liked Borderlands 1. I don't like Borderlands 2, but Borderlands 1 and Black Ops 1. Black Ops 1. Those are the only games. I think I have Battlefield 4 or 3 or 2, but I've never played it. So I literally have 2 Xbox games. And I'm kind of like, I would like to just get rid of that and just go down to just buy the games on computer and not have to worry about it. But even then, what is stopping me? So I'm starting to look into Steam a little bit. And Steam itself is just one giant DRM thing. If I go out to the store and I drop $20 on a game on Steam, and Steam has a fight with the publisher of that game, Steam can block my access to play the game I just spent my $20 buying. I don't own my game anymore. I own a license that could end at any time because Steam could go defunct. The game company could go defunct. But if I go out and I buy an old game, so like the only other, I think I have 2 PC games that I play as well, and that's Warcraft 3 and Civilization 4. And so I have these games, and if Blizzard completely vanishes, I can still play Warcraft 3. In fact, it runs beautifully on Wine, and so I can play Warcraft 3 on my Linux systems. No problem. I have that ability. And Civilization 4, I think, is much the same way. You know, there's no online requirement for that game. I can install it on a computer, and I can play it. And I actually have a couple other games. I think I have the original Worms computer game, which does not work well on just HD computers. It really is made for an older time. And I have another one called Dark Reign, which, by the way, work beautifully. I can run those games in a Windows 95, a Windows 98 VirtualBox. They have no outside connectivity, and I can play them just fine on Linux or otherwise. So with that, the old style, you bought a game, and if the company dies, I still have access to it. Now, part of this talk here was inspired by talking about, or by listening to Brian Lunduke's Thursday show this week, where he's explained to somebody in response to a question they had made. And somebody asked him the question and said, you know, I'm on a Mac, I want to jump over to Linux. What is the thing that caused you to leave the Mac ecosystem? Because he used Mac prior to coming to Linux. And he's like, you know, I looked down and I saw the Mac store and the software store with the Mac, which of course now we have the app stores and all these other things. Here's the thing. If I'm relying, even on the new Android device I built, if I'm still relying on Google Play Store, I'm limited in the functionality. But all of the apps that I have on that Android device that runs Lineage OS instead of that, I have all of the operating system, all of the apps, everything that I have that I'm running on that phone, every bit of it, I actually have the physical copy in my manual backups. So if that phone dies, I can get another phone just like it, rebuild the entire thing exactly the same way I've done without having to go on the internet. Okay? And so Brian Lunduke was talking about that kind of stuff. And he was talking about the fact that we have this concept of he wanted his pictures to be his. He wanted his games to be his. He wanted his videos to be his. He wanted his music to be his. And he saw, even a long time back, the shifting tide by which that was starting to fade away. And that's what we're talking about here today. So I looked across the whole landscape, and most of what we do in our culture, we don't own anymore, unless we're careful. And so let's look at some of these issues. So I jumped in to look first at the video games. And here's an article from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Now, some of my resources here are older. This isn't like the news where it's all cutting edge from the last week. Some of these are going back a ways because I really want to plumb the depths of how long this has been happening beneath our eyes without us even realizing. And I'll tell you, back in July 2008, this is almost 10 years ago, in fact, July 2008, I was just in the process of moving to another state. I was just finished graduate school. I was starting a professor career. And I mean, I didn't have a smartphone. I had no concept of any of this stuff. No concept of any of this stuff. This is a decade ago. I hadn't taken a blue pill or red pill or whatever it is. I hadn't woken up to the world around me. I was just a little hapless guy running through the system, going into debt, blah, 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 woohoo, let's just do everything the companies want us to do. And that's the way I was. But here, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, a decade ago, is talking about this article called "You Bought It, But You Don't Own It." And this is the reality. And this is the thing where we talk about the costs and what does our money do. And opportunity cost is an economic term, meaning that if I spend $1,000 here, I lose the ability to spend $1,000 over there. Well, if I want to buy a movie, I want to buy the movie, for crying out loud. I don't want to buy a license to use the movie if the phases of the moon stay aligned. I want to buy a movie to use it. And that's this case here actually came down to a copyright case with World of Warcraft, which was fairly new because there's this company or this guy, whatever it was, and he had the option where you could pay him and he would play your account for you, or a series of people would play your account for you to get you up to level 70 without you having to do anything. And Blizzard comes out and says, no, this is a violation of our end user license agreement. And in reality, this went to the courts, and the courts agreed with them. Because this is a licensed game, and the license was part of the terms and conditions. The license had the term and condition there, you may not transfer it. Okay, so this is fighting the argument with Blizzard and whatnot. Other ones, here's another nice little article. You don't own your games. So as so many people talk about how Microsoft's recent rescinded policy about online check-ins and trade restrictions. So this is back, if you remember, when right around the time when it was a little bit before Windows 10 came out. What was it? It was when the Xbox One came out. They were talking about having the inability to actually trade in your games, which is a huge market because I like buying used stuff before I like buying new stuff, period. I just like buying used before buying new. Used. My Nexus 5X phone, I bought that for $200 used. I know how to hunt for a deal. Take the time to hunt for a deal. So I want to look for used games. What Microsoft wanted to do is kill the used game market. Basically, a game, despite having the physical CD, all it was is just to download the core files. You still had to go online, grab the rest of everything else, and a game, once you had used it, could not be transferred to anybody else, which meant the used game market was going to die. That caused a major uproar. So, of course, they listened, but they didn't listen, be like, ooh, we want user opinion. Oh, wow, okay, that's a good perspective. Let's not do that. They did it because they would lose the battle to PlayStation if they didn't. Okay? Not to say that PlayStation's perfect. PlayStation also buckled and started having their online service now as a paid service instead of it was free for the longest time, to my knowledge. Again, I don't really play games, so I just get a chance to do the peripheral stuff. So pretty much, basically, this was what Microsoft was going to do. Now, they, of course, reversed that. Of course, we had already talked a little bit about Steam, so hey, why not just chat a little bit more about Steam? So in this case here, this is a guy where some guy had done whatever. He spent $1,500 purchasing 250 games and they banned his account. Yeah, you can't have your games back. It's not like you can download the games and then now you have a copy of the game. And this is that very thing Brian Lunduke was talking about. He's talking about that very issue where, in this instance, the buying something should mean you buy it. Now, if I lose it due to my stupidity, that's a different story. But I mean, I've gone back and I started to think about the things that he'd said, and I recalled, if I go back into my backups, I still have a executable installer for like Winamp version 2. If you're old enough to know what Winamp is, kudos to you. It ended up being converted into some Linux app now. I forget which one it is, but, back in that day, I had, and I still have entire folders of freeware and shareware software that I had downloaded that I still like to this day. That, I mean, they don't run on any modern Windows computer or anything, but I can still boot my computer into Windows 98 on a VirtualBox and run it. And that's a cool thing. That's a cool option. That's a cool thing that we can do. And, but with this, you don't get a downloadable installer. You don't get the ability to buy this game and use it somewhere else if your Steam account dies. So if I buy these games on the Steam account, the convenience factor is if I boot into a new computer, load up the Steam account, now I can re-download those games and play them. But it's still tied to that Steam account. I don't ever have the option to play them. If Steam goes defunct, or if they ban my account, or if there's some fight between Steam and the manufacturer of that game and they pull the game out, they can pull the rights to that game, you can lose the ability. You know, Amazon was caught doing the same thing, pulling it out. Actually, I think we're going to talk more about that in a bit. So I'm not going to go into that story. But this is the problem, is that we do not buy our video games anymore. We buy a license to play our video game. Everything is now delivered on a DRM content platform. If and think back, I didn't pull any articles on this, but remember with the home integration systems, you know, Google bought the one, I forget which one it was, and then about a year or so later, they killed the server for it. So all of these $300, $400 smart home hubs just died one day. Paperweight, $400 paperweight. I bought some expensive paperweights in my day. $400 paperweights, not worth it. So we don't own our games anymore. We don't own them. So if you remember this one, Lyft wanted to, I think it was this article here is the better article to start on. So Lyft wanted to have this level 5 automation, and they're just like, they wanted to be very nice to you. Owning a car costs you lots of money. In fact, according to the numbers, it costs an average of $9,000 a year to own a car, and that's just a lot to own a car. So just use our service instead. We'll take that horrible burden of the cars, and then you can just use our cars as your service. I'd rather own my car, thank you. And repair it. We'll get to that one in a bit. I'd rather own my car, though, right? I'd rather own my car rather than have to hail some stranger, or even worse, hail some robotic driving mad because it's hacked through Manhattan car. Okay? But this is the thing, is that Lyft wants to, they want to have a network where they have all these cars. Of course, Uber's working on this, Google's working on this, Apple's working on this. All these big corporations are working on these self-automated fleets. But it's now all the corporations that own all the cars. So while I might pay $9,000 annual for a car, while that might be true, okay, the challenge is I'm paying a variety of different people, keyword different people. If I need my oil changed, I buy oil from Advanced Auto and do it myself. If I need tires, I go to this nice little tire shop. If there's some other mechanical problem, I can find a mechanic that's trustworthy who's a small business guy. I'm dispersing that $9,000 among a group of other people who may or may not be evil, but at least that's all not going to one place and I'm tied to it. Okay, but if they have their world, I have to pick one of the services, or maybe all of the services, and to spread my $9,000. Remember we talked about opportunity cost earlier? Well, here's another take on opportunity cost. If I'm giving my $9,000 to Lyft, I lose the ability to give that $9,000 to a series of other small business owners, and now I'm supporting a big corporation. Well, if we all do that, now we have another oligarchy set up. Oh my! So this is the problem. But let's poke a little bit of hole in that 9,000, because let's see where these came from. I think it was this one. So here is your annual cost according to the AAA of owning a car. Payments and depreciation. Okay, now if you're probably listening to me, you probably aren't the average person, and not being the average person, this does look about average. Now the average car payment, in fact, this is an old number. Do you know right now an average car payment is about $500 a month? So let me grab my calculator here. $500 a month times 12. That's $6,000. That's average, people. That is right now the average car payment in America. Now, if you're not in America, you're different. So $6,000 is car payment. Fuel costs. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I think I don't even think I put $100 in gas in my car a month. Let's say I do 80. I think that's low a month. So I'm doing about $1,000 in gas. Okay, so their fuel costs seem pretty high. Now I work from home and I don't always leave the house, so I don't think doubling that's a big deal. So I think their fuel cost looks pretty accurate. I think that's fine. Interest. I have no idea what. I would think that interests were tied up in the payments, but maybe that's the case. Maybe they're not. Insurance, $887 might sound reasonable. I pay significantly less than that. Maintenance and repairs, $355. That's actually pretty low. Registration taxes, that's pretty low. So regardless, they're saying $9,000. Does anybody see the giant black swan? What if you're intelligent and you don't put a car on payments? Your fuel cost, which you could very easily purchase your gas from, again, small business owners rather than the huge corporate. Your interest dies, your payments dies, your depreciation becomes essentially null and void. Your insurance, you can opt for the cheaper insurance if you want to, but your insurance is kind of there. Maintenance, repairs, and registration. So that kind of drops your cost of owning a car to like maybe a third of what they're saying. So maybe $3,000, $4,000 to own a car. Now, what's the cost of that? So let's see, there's mediums. Is this on the medium? Yeah, I think that's on the medium sedan or somewhere around there. Of course, they have a variety of different things. Now, I don't use these services because don't forget that every single time you call and hail an Uber, a poor kitty just like this gets clubbed. And I don't want to club kitties. I don't want to be responsible for that. So I don't call Ubers. All right. But regardless, what I wanted to mention here is that if you factor in the fact that a smart person is not taking out a car loan, pays cash for their car, and builds up to buy the new one, you get the cost down to 1/3 of it. You will end up paying twice the amount of money to use these ride-hailing services than you would possibly ever use in owning your car, in most cases. Plus, you lose the freedom of hopping in your car at 3 a.m. and going out for the taco through Taco Bell's drive-thru. I don't know. But do I really want to rely on a robotic car from one of the 3 big corporations, all of which store and collect data on me? No, I really don't. But we don't own our cars anymore. This is that last place where we still own a little bit of ownership. We're going to get more into that a little bit later. But Uber has said they're getting into this. Apple wants to get into this. Google wants to get into this. These articles are from Lyft. Lyft is actually sitting here going, yeah, they're launching a fleet of self-driving cars. So all the big companies now own the cars. Oh, you know, when a company sits here and says, we're going to take that burden off of you and just provide you a service instead, you are now a slave. Actually, it's not really slavery as much. It's probably more like serfdom. You have the freedom to leave, but you don't have the opportunity to leave because you're too tied into your income. That's called serfdom. When slavery ended in southern United States, it turned into serfdom. People didn't leave. They weren't whipped as much, but they didn't leave because they didn't have anywhere to go. And that's where the companies are moving. That's where we are owned by our corporate overlords. They've already taken our video games. They've already taken our music. They've already taken our movies. Now they want to take our cars. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about movies and such. Oh yeah, here was Uber's CEO. These guys are talking. I guess we're not leaving cars yet. Mm-hmm. 1 second. All right. So here, it's like, what if there was a mobility service that's cheaper than owning a car, more reliable? Do you see how they're operating their narrative on a false premise? We've already poked a hole through that false premise. We popped it. It's floating somewhere else. But he's like, this is cheaper. No, it's not. It's more expensive. And now you want to get rid of the middleman who's trying to make a buck and get rid of all your contractors? So 100% of your profits goes to your corporate overlord. Yeah, there you go. That's good stuff. You might own a car, or like maybe some people own a horse. As long as I got a 6-shooter on my side, I'll be good. May take a ride on the weekend or something. Y'all wanna be in on this? So that's scary. This is scary stuff, right? All right, let's jump over to music. Remember this one? This is when Microsoft did the creators update last year, I think it was. No, it was earlier. Oh wait, hold on. Oh, this is just July. Okay, this is a more recent article than I was thinking. But when Microsoft updated the last creators update, they actually pulled DRM off of Windows 10. So you couldn't play, if you had downloaded music through Napster, you couldn't actually play the music you downloaded. I think you could still do it if you were on the internet, but you couldn't do it offline. All of the codecs to play that, everything was locked down to Windows, and then they pulled the DRM out. So you had to be on an internet connection to play any of these things. Of course, Napster's page, I didn't pull up Napster's page, but it's really funny when this was first identified. Their solution, don't update Windows. As if you have a choice, because it updates whether you want it to or not. We're updating now. Close all your work, because we're restarting. Oh, no, don't do this. I'm on a sensitive project. Nah, it's too late. Too late. It's updating. It's updating all the way. We're updating. Whether we want it or not, we're updating. Article from The Guardian. So, with The Guardian here, I like this article because they really went into a lot of different things. So, music and films. In many instances, we've already said if you buy a DVD, you cannot rip the DVD. Even though the technology exists, you cannot legally rip the DVD because it violates Section 1204 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which specifically states you cannot get around DRM, and the DVD is blocked with DRM. And so that's kind of the problem that you have. So the only option then is to find a way to purchase a copy of something that's not DRM locked for a digital file, which is kind of a pain because I really don't know of a good place to do that. And I would gladly do that, movies or documentaries or otherwise, as long as I have the ability to have that device, put it on my own personal server, and watch it from any device that I own without your proprietary app. That's the thing that I want. Very difficult to find. But music, most instances where we get our music these days, it's locked into DRM. Even Amazon, there was this transitional time like 10, 15 years ago where you'd buy music, you'd download it, and it wasn't DRM locked. Now, to do that, you have to be doing your music through your Amazon app. They want you tied to their app because they can monitor everything you do. They know what you're listening to, how frequently you're listening to it, when you're listening to it. And some of these devices can even detect other people in the room. They can lock your location data into it. They know where you are. They are collecting way too much data about you, and that is the problem. Books, of course. With books, they can just... The book that's on your device, they can just remotely zap it off if they have a fight with the publisher. Now, I haven't double-checked mine. I have no idea why, but my book, Testing and Temptations, is no longer available as an ebook on Amazon. I have no idea why, but it's not. So that's kind of curious to me. But we'll see what happens. But again, I want the ability. In fact, in my office here, using Project Gutenberg and other places to get open source and DRM-free books, I have built up a very nice book media server where I can drop the books onto my server, and then any device in my house can grab those on any e-reader on that device, be it a computer or a tablet, a phone or whatever. So I have this Calibri server that I can take any free DRM free book, drop it on there, and then serve it to anybody on my network, which is a cool thing to do. The problem is you can't do that with your standard Kindle book because your Kindle book is locked by DRM. Social media, of course, we're not going to go into that, but yeah, social media. iCloud, Apple's very clear about your ownership of iCloud accounts. It states in the terms and conditions, you agree that your account is non-transferable and that any rights to your Apple ID or content within your account terminate upon your death. Upon receipt of your death certificate, your account may be terminated and all contents within your account deleted. Well, that's exciting because there are actually laws that state digital content can pass with the estate, but companies don't really care. And so we have that kind of issue there as well. Of course, here's from the fun DVD makers. You really don't own the DVDs you bought, thanks to copyright. Well, the thing is, you own the DVD. As long as you have a DVD player, you can play them, but it would be illegal to rip them. And that's a challenge. It's a problem. you know? And so in this instance, this is the type of stuff we need to kill, because I need to have ownership over the things that I buy. I don't want to throw out my money for some nebulous end-user license agreement that I'm forced into binding arbitration, that I have no rights, that I have no ability and no control, and depend on the phases of the moon aligning right. I want to own the content. If I want to go out and buy a book, I want to own the book. If I want to go out and I want to buy a movie, I want to own the movie. And if the company goes defunct, I want to still watch my movie. I don't want my movie dependent on your company staying alive and existing. Of course, what happens when Amazon dies? What happens to all your content? It's gone. We've already demonstrated this. It's gone. And of course, we all learned that Amazon can take away your digital books and movies whenever they want. You know, whether they think you are violating your terms and conditions or whatever else, this is the problem. That even though you purchased the movie, you purchased the book, you purchased the thing, you didn't actually purchase it. You purchased a right to watch it. It's the whole thing with these streaming services. I didn't pull up any articles on it, but we can all, we all know what I'm talking about when you get into these streaming services. You know, Netflix and Hulu and all of these services. Of course, Disney's now doing their all-in-one service that you can use to tie all your other services in. You have your Google services, your Amazon, your iTunes services. All of these different services, you do not own anything on that. All you are paying for perpetually from now until the day that you die is the ability to watch stuff on it. Now, that may or may not be a good deal for you. It completely depends on who you are. And I watch, if I'm going to watch anything here in my office, I watch things on view.yahoo.com. It is Hulu's free end, so I'm not paying anything for it. And yeah, it's a bummer when a show I like to watch suddenly is not on it anymore, but you know what? It's better than me paying to watch that show and it's not on there anymore. But they have the full right to do that kind of stuff. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about here before we drive this train home is we're going to talk here about right to repair. Now, the right to repair is not just about repairing your iPhone. So, of course, with all these new iPhones, including my exciting SE with the fingerprint reader there, which I have taped off because I'm not giving Apple my fingerprint. If this button goes bad, and they go bad frequently, and I replace it, the actual button is hard-coded to the board. So while it would not work as a fingerprint reader, it would still work as a home button until you run an update on your phone. When you run an update on the phone, it says, hey, this phone's been tampered with, and it bricks. And they will not get your data off of it. So you've locked your data onto this phone. So a group of people are talking about this right to repair legislation. Why was it in Nebraska? Because one of the biggest places the right to repair is waging is because of farm tractors. Because John Deere is saying, no, when you buy this tractor, you are buying the software in the tractor, and because the software in the tractor, we've encrypted it, repairing your tractor. Fixing the exhaust manifold on your tractor constitutes a violation of Section 1204 of the DMCA. So if we want to talk about anything, let's just repeal that stupid part of the bill. If I legally buy a DVD, I should be able to legally rip it. As long as I'm not dispersing it to other people, that should be just fine. Okay? And this is the same thing. If I buy this iPhone, I should have the ability to take this iPhone to a competent repair person to repair it. Not necessarily be forced to take it to Apple. But John Deere's in on this. GM is in on this because they don't want you to fix their car without going to their certified people. So we do not even own our cars. We do not own our tractors. We do not own our phones. Even right now, like, it wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft goes this route, although I'm not sure they will. Just because they just don't do enough of their board repair stuff themselves. But at the same token, the problem we have here is that nothing that we have in our modern world and all this internet connected age, everything we have is locked to the DRM of the device. It is locked to a licensing agreement, usually with binding arbitration against a company. And these companies are becoming anti-consumer. So the final point of the matter is we are owned by our corporate overlords. So thanks for watching. If you would like to help support this channel, you can check out switchtolinux.com/support to learn how you can get this message on. Thank you for watching.